I'm on the highway. I call my parents and I'm like, hey, I just booked Top Gun. And my mom starts screaming. And my dad is kind of quiet and he goes, but that's the Navy, right?
We don't stop. All right. I said we don't stop. We don't stop. Outside, inside, we don't stop. Global, worldwide, we don't stop. From the bottom to the top, we don't stop. From the burbs to the block, we don't stop. Outside, inside, we don't stop. Global, worldwide, we don't stop. From the bottom to the top, we don't stop. From the burbs to the block, we don't stop.
Well, thank you, Jay, for coming. Thank you, my brother. Appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
I'm always learning, Jay. So when we was doing the podcast, you went to 11 school in 12 years?
Yeah, man. My dad was in the Air Force, and we moved a lot. It was like every 2 or 3 years or something like that. We would bounce around. And even when we were in a city, I think it was just in my parents, because both my parents' fathers were also in the Air Force. So I think it was just a part of their life. So we would be in a city and they'd be like, I want to move to the other side of town, which meant I had to go to another school on the other side of town. So it was one time, like in Tulsa, I went to middle school and high school in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I think I went to like 5 or 6 schools in the course of 5-6 years, just there alone. It's wild, man.
So you're very comfortable being in an uncomfortable place.
Yeah.
Because you were always in a new place.
Always.
Like every 12 months or something.
Always, man. I feel like, I'll say like the one of the biggest gifts I think I got from that experience was learning how to find comfort in the uncomfortable and just being like, oh, well, this is just where it's at. So like, I need to figure out how I navigate me in this spot and get the thing that I want and or need in this spot. And I think going into all of those schools over and over again is making new friend groups and then starting new basketball teams and over again. I think it was just a huge lesson in that.
Wow. So did your parents help you with that transition? Or did they just kind of say, good luck, here's your lunch?
It was a good luck situation, and here's $3 for lunch.
Okay.
Lunch probably costs a little bit more now, but it was like $2.50 back then, and then I got to do whatever I want with the 50 cents, I guess. But nah, it was different. You know, I think my parents were teenagers when I was born, so I think, you know, to their credit, the skill set of that wasn't there because they didn't know it themselves, right? Like it wasn't something that they had gotten from their parents. And so, you know, they were busy trying to navigate and figure out their own lives and their own career growth and keeping their relationship together while having this like kid who was getting in trouble every week in school. And so a lot of it was kind of me like, you know, being out there and figuring it out on my own. Now there was still discipline in my house. That was very consistent. But as far as going out there and like figuring it out, like it's something that I had to do.
So Jay, being an actor is a big deal. I mean that's a real big deal. How did you determine in your mind that you could do that? I mean, you know, we always talk about big vision,
right?
All right, you know, reach for the stars,
yeah.
All right. How did you decide one day, I'm gonna be an actor? Did you just say, I'm a good-looking guy, and I think I can do that?
I'm still trying to figure it out. I don't even know if I'm still doing it. No, you know, I think what happened for me, I played basketball. I had this crazy thing where, like, when I was between 7th and 8th grade, I grew 5 inches. Between 8th grade and 9th grade, I grew another 4 inches. So in the course of like a year and a half, 2 years, my knees hurt all the time, my shins hurt all the time, but all of a sudden I was tall, and everybody was like, bro, you gotta play basketball. And I was like, I don't play basketball. And they was like, bro, we don't care, you're tall. We just foul. If that's like, we don't care. We just need a body. And then I played in 8th grade for the first time, like competitively, and I fell in love with it. And so that then my focus was like, oh, I'm going to the league. Like, it's not even a question. I printed, this is when KG got hit. KG was the first person in the league to get a $100 million contract. And so I went and printed a check from the Seattle Supersonics, RIP, and I put it on my refrigerator for $100 million. And I was like, I'm going to go play for the Seattle Supersonics because Sean Kemp was my dude and Gary Payton. So I'm going to go play for the Seattle Supersonics for $100 million. And that was my first big vision, my first big goal, right? And so then from there, it was like, all right, well, what are the steps I got to do to get there? Well, I got to go play college basketball at the time. So then everything was just like, how do I get to that step? And I was fortunate enough to be able to go play college basketball. And I got there, and yo, them dudes are fast. They big. Some of them are wet. They can shoot, and they don't get to the league. Like, they don't get nowhere near the league. And I just remember being a freshman having this moment of like, oh, this might be where this ends. I'm still gonna put my all in it every day, but this might be where it ends. Like, the sneakers getting hung up after this. And
how did you deal with that realization? Like, I got this dream of going to the league, but you know what? I don't think it's going to happen.
It was hard, man. It's hard because you're still playing, too, because it's like I didn't want to give up. You know what I mean? But I still had this moment of, like, reality where I was like, all right, well, there is a system a lot of times. There's one-off guys who make it for sure, but a lot of times there's systems that you have to be in and, like, schools you got to be at and cities. Like Chicago. Chicago got, like, 12 people in the league right now or something like that, 20 people in the league. Like, there's cities where competition is just at such a high level, right? And I just wasn't in that. So I think I just had to have this moment of reality with myself of, like, all right, well, if basketball isn't going to be the end goal, what are other things that I'm passionate about? What are other things that I want to do? And in this current moment, how can I use basketball to get me there? I got somebody paying for my education, so I got to use that to the fullest. And that's going to at least maybe get me a step closer to whatever I potentially want to do post-basketball. So my focus kind of shifted to, like, school and, like, just being the best student. I could be still hooping and loving it, but, like, also knowing that, like, there was something after basketball in life. And while I was playing basketball, I fell in love with acting. And, like, that's when it all happened. I used my electives in the theater program. And
was there one person that you saw, like KG, that's how you fell in love, that you was going to the league. Was there one person or people that you saw on television and movies and you said, I can do that? I had the privilege when Bill Clinton was president. I asked him, Jay, I said, how big does your ego have to be, Mr. President, to be the leader of the free world? He said, not big at all, Louis. I just looked at the people who were doing it and said, I can do better than that.
I love that.
Who did you see and
that.
say, I could at least do that or I could do better than that?
Well, I'm not going to say I could do better than that because he's a cold dude and he might track me down. But Denzel, Malcolm X.
Okay.
That for me was like when he stands in front of that hospital and he puts his hand up, or the police station or whatever it is, and he puts his hand up, squeezes his fist and turns, and all of them, everybody turns and walks in like full synchronicity. I was like, yo, that's Malcolm X. That's him right there. How do I do? And I very clearly knew Denzel was Denzel. You know what I'm saying? And I very clearly knew I was watching a movie. But in that moment, I was like, that's real. And like from then on, I was like, oh, that's what I want to do. I want to figure that out. And I think Will and the Fresh Prince, I think because it informed so much of like my high school and college years to a degree, I think he was a big influence as well. Yeah.
Great. So you played in the game. And that was on CBS, on BET. Yeah. Then you got the big role in Insecure. Yeah. And then Top Gun. Yeah. How did you transit? That's a big leap, man.
It's a leap.
And it became the #1 grossing film in 2022. Yeah.
That's what Tom Cruise.
Thank you.
Tom Cruise.
Thank you.
Now, because I'm a good student, I did learn something in the podcast when you said casually that your daddy was in the Air Force.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
So I'm sure he kind of helped you with some of that
He
role.
thought he was helping. My pops used to call me. So when I booked it, it was a crazy experience. When I auditioned for the game, I auditioned 8 times for my role on the game. That's not normal, especially for a show that's already going, right? And Lewis, you know this, but like when Lauren London and I joined the game, our first season was supposed to be the last season of the show. And then these guys over here went and did what they do. And every advertiser in town was like, oh, we need to put money on that show. How do we keep it around for a minute? And so we ended up getting to do another 3 seasons out of it. And we were supposed to literally just do 1. And I auditioned 8 times for that. And I was like, this is the craziest process I've ever been in my life. Either you want me or I'm doing the same thing every single time I show up. Like, I'm not giving y'all nothing new. I don't even know how to do that at this point. Top Gun was the exact opposite of that. I walked in, I auditioned for our director, Joe Kaczynski, on a Wednesday or Thursday. On Friday, I got a call from my agent that my tape was going to Tom Cruise, and he was going to watch it. And at that point, just to be real, I was like, hey, I already won. Tom Cruise going to know my name. He's at least going to be like, oh, I've seen that dude before. I was like, I'm good, whether I get this or not. Monday, I get the call that I booked it. I call my parents. If y'all ever been to LA, I was on the 405 driving down the highway. It's like 6 lanes across. It's always crazy traffic. I'm on the highway. I call my parents and I'm like, hey, I just booked Top Gun. And my mom starts screaming and my dad is kind of quiet and he goes, but that's the Navy, right? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, man, that's too bad, son. I was like, bro, you ain't even been in the Air Force in 20 years. Why you still got a rivalry with the Navy? Like, what do you care? It was amazing. But yeah, bro, I mean, the whole experience of training for that was insane. Like, we had to fly 3 days a week. We were in a plane learning how to fly. I could not land us, but I could keep us in the air. I'm just going right now. You know what I'm saying? I ain't worked on my landings in a minute. But my dad would call me every day when I would drive out, and he would give me tips of the day. This was his way of contributing. So he would call, and he would be like, hey, just so you know, or he would leave a voice note, hey, just so you know, you drive a plane with your feet, not your hands. And I was like, what is this dude talking about? Like, what? And I didn't notice at the time. But this is the first one he gives me on my way to my first flight. And this is actually true. You don't fly the plane with your hands. When they're steering on the runway, it's all in their feet. Like, you actually don't touch the yoke in front of you at all. You just use the yoke to pull up, and then when you bank left and right when you're in the air, and that's it. But when you land, your hands don't have to be on the wheel for nothing, on the yoke for nothing. But he did that, basically. He would give me all these lessons, like, every 2 to 3 days. He would send me a voice note.
As you're training for the role and going through all of this, did you ever have any doubt, like, I hope I don't blow this. Yeah. I hope I don't embarrass myself.
Oh, yeah.
I hope they don't fire me because I'm so bad.
All of us, every single one of us. But yeah, man, because it's this, we did 45 hours worth of flight instruction in about 2 months, which is enough to get your private's license. That usually takes people 6 months to do. It was super intense. And physically, it's also intense because while we're doing it, we're learning how to pull G's. And we're fully flying the plane. There's somebody in there with us, but we are actually flying the plane from takeoff to land. And you're pulling G's nonstop and doing all these maneuvers. And, like, you get sick, you might throw up. If you pull G's long enough and you're not physically prepared and, like, doing this thing that they do called the Heimlich maneuver, where, like, your body is fully engaged to push the blood flow back up to your head. If you're not doing that, people pass out. They get lightheaded because the blood is pushing down, so they pass out. And then on top of that, the biggest thing where I think there was a lot of self-doubt was this crazy swim test that we had to take. And not because I didn't know how to swim. I know how to swim, but you had to swim with 40 pounds of gear on, a helmet, gloves, boots. It's a Navy test that you have to take to be able to fly in any of their aircraft. In case, and the simulation is if you were to, like, have to land on water, eject over water, and how to save yourself. We did it with the open water U.S. Olympic swim coach, who thought we were trying to be Olympians. Because he was pushing us like, hey, you got to go. And we're like, bro, we ain't even put the gear on before. This is the first time I'm even trying the helmet. But we had to practice. We had to swim 2-3 days a week in this gear. And if you don't pass this test, you can't be in the jet. Well, if you can't be in the jet, you can't film the movie. And if you can't film the movie, then what we here for? So, like, there was a lot of self-doubt with that. It was a 5-hour test in a pool. And you're probably truly swimming for 4 hours of it, 4 hours and 15 minutes of it with 40 pounds of gear on.
Being in a movie with Tom Cruise, was that intimidating?
It was intimidating to start out. The first time we saw Tom, not the first time we saw him on set. We'd all met him before. We had done some stuff with him before, but that was very casual. And he's a super chill dude. At work, he's there for work. So it's no games. Like he's like, let's go. And the first time we worked with him on set, it was actually kind of like this. We're all sitting in this auditorium and he walks down this aisle to this podium that's in the front. And the first couple times when they were just getting our reactions as to start out, so the first couple times we shot it, they just used his stand-in. One of the times, Tom actually steps in and walks down the aisle himself. And every single one of us broke. It was like, every single one of us couldn't stay in the scene because Tom Cruise was in front of you. And then what's interesting is you start to realize how much of a perfectionist he is, how much of a craftsman he is, how much he cares about the camera angle, the camera lens, the height. He cares about all of it, and he's constantly tweaking it and talking to you about it as a performer, so educating you so you know. And then that intimidation goes away and you realize that you're kind of in this like acting school, film school with, one of the greatest actors of all time, right? And probably like the last movie star to really make money in a box office. So it was pretty crazy. It went from intimidation to like all of a sudden like a mentor and a friend.
What are the things that you had to do? And the reason I'm getting into these questions is because most people say, good-looking guy, shows up, just does his thing, he's good, makes an awful lot of money. What are the things that you had to do off camera when there was no shooting to prepare, both physically and mentally, that people didn't even ask you to do, Jay, but you knew, I got to do this?
Oh, man, I'm a freak about preparation just in general. So, and this started with me for the game. So for the game, I had a friend who was director of operations at UCLA back in the day. So, and I don't even know if BET actually knew this was happening. I doubt it because I'm sure I would have got a phone call. But basically, our season on the game always started in like October. We start filming. Well, I would call my boy and be like, hey, can I train with your receiving corps for the month of August? Just because I wanted to know what it was like to be out there running. First of all, them boys are fast. They're big. I ain't never going to let a 21-year-old talk to me like that again. But they were amazing football players. But for me, it was being able to study their movement, every single thing that they did, how they ate, how they worked out, right? So I could carry that to the game. And I wanted to look like I was a 215-pound, 6'4" receiver when I showed up. I didn't want to look like I was an actor who they was trying to make y'all believe was a football player, right? That then turned into, for example, on Insecure, in season 2 of Insecure, my character trains for a marathon. I trained for a marathon. It was miserable. I'll never do it again. But I wanted to know what it would feel like in my body and mentally what it would do to me if I was going to work every day. I had just gone through a crazy breakup. I was still in love with this girl but couldn't voice it and couldn't talk about it. And I was also like trying to advance my career and train for a marathon. Like I wanted to know what that actually felt like. So I trained for a marathon all the way through the end of that season. For Top Gun, same thing. It was constantly reading books about flight, constantly reading about nutrition was a huge thing because you kind of had to know what the last meal you could have was before you got on a flight. Otherwise, you were going to see that meal again while you were in the flight. And then you had to know everybody had something different. Some people ate rice, some people ate ginger, some people would eat eggs. I wouldn't eat anything. Like we all had our own version of how we prepared. And for me, it's always just about watching reading. I love trying to take experiences from other people to try to incorporate lessons learned in their experience into mine. Yeah, man.
And I know he's serious. Me, Jay, a few clients, and Jay and his dad went to the Super Bowl one year. And after the Super Bowl, we go to dinner. And usually you go to Super Bowl dinners around about 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night. And Jay wasn't eating much. And I said, did you eat too much of the game? He said, no. He said, I got to work out when I leave here. I said, you trying to show out? You trying to show out for the clients? What are you trying to do? But literally, when we left dinner, he went to the hotel to work out. And that was probably like 11:30, midnight. And him and his dad had a very early flight the next day. So that commitment that he has to his craft is real. And I think the commitment that we have to whatever we're doing has to be that same type of commitment. I want to ask you this, Jay. Give us some advice and tips on living outside of your comfort zone for growth.
I believe, just a quick story, I did not want to play Lawrence in Insecure at all whatsoever. I am a phenomenal compartmentalizer. That's really my superpower. I've lived a lot of life not dealing with feelings and just being able to push stuff away and not think about it. And Lawrence, for me, was not that. Lawrence was a dude who they wanted to live in his feelings. And so I was very uncomfortable doing that role, especially for the first couple of years. After a while, I figured it out and understood, worked through some of my own stuff. But it was very uncomfortable for me. And I think the biggest thing that I would say that I think has actually been one of the it kind of goes back to what I'll say I feel like has been my superpower is finding how you are comfortable in the uncomfortable. It's okay to be uncomfortable. You're supposed to be uncomfortable. All growth is uncomfortable. It's not supposed to be easy. And I think that we have to understand that the only way to get on the other side is to go through it. And as you're going through it, allow yourself, even if you get knocked off your journey and you zig or you zag, allow yourself to learn something from the zig and from the zag that gets you back on track to the thing that you're doing. I was saying this earlier, my experience on set and who I show up as on set every day as an actor is 100% tied back to me as a basketball player. That's it. I don't have to necessarily use athleticism in my day job as an actor, but who I am as a teammate to my crew, to my castmates, to everyone who makes me look good to go do my job, literally, it feels like a basketball team. We all got the thing that we're supposed to do. And if we all show up and do it, then we get to make magic. And I just want to leave y'all with whatever the thing is that you want to do, whatever that goal is or that vision is, know that it's a lot of bumps along the way, but every single one of them is an opportunity for you to learn something and for you to soak something up and figure out how to use it to your advantage.
Well, Jay, people wanted me to ask you, do you get free Nissans?
I got a Nissan. I got an Aria.
But that ain't the question I'm going to ask you. The question I'm going to ask you is coming back to Hill Harper, giving yourself options. Yeah. What type of things did you do to give yourself those type of options that Nissan would say, that's my guy right there?
I mean, I think a big part of it is putting yourself out there and just being open, right? I think there's a lot of things. I think I've been fortunate enough, and some of this probably just goes back to the way I was raised, but I think I've been fortunate enough to again, really see an opportunity and get the most out of that opportunity and realize that the person who afforded you that opportunity, right, did it because they believe in you, they care about you, they want you to get the most from it, they want you to grow from it, and they want you to be able to go do other things with it. And I think I was just talking, I don't know where Keith went, but I was just talking to Keith about this. When I was on the game, Keith and Lewis would call and be like, hey man, we got this branded opportunity for you. You gonna come do it? And I'd be like, yes sir, I'm gonna be right there, I'm gonna come do it. I wouldn't know how to do a commercial today if it wasn't for those opportunities when I was on the game, right? I didn't have to go do those. I could have just sat at the house in LA and been like, nah, I'm cool. But I did them. And it was a chance for me to learn that the commercial world is wildly different than TV and film. And so I think like, you know, it's just being open to experiences and realizing again how those experiences can translate to the thing that you want in life.
I know you're on your way to O'Hare, man. Thank you for coming by.
Thank you, bro.
Appreciate it.
Lord.
Jay Ellis.